Hi, my name is Dharmendra Rai and I'm Mumbai's first mind map trainer. I'm extremely delighted to be interviewing Mr. Chester Elton, who is a New York Times best-selling author and trainer. So thank you very much for speaking to me, Chester.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Could you tell our audience something about yourself, the training that you do, how you got into it, and something like that?
Absolutely. So this is my first trip to India, by the way, and I could not have had more fun. The people have been wonderful. The food is fabulous. And a little bit about my journey. I started in sales, and I sold recognition programs, and it was interesting. I thought to myself, if I could become a thought leader, then people would call me. I wouldn't have to call them. So it was very selfish, right? I wanted to generate more business. Mm-hmm. So I called our CEO, a delightful man named Kent Murdoch, and I said, Kent, if thought leaders write, if we as a company could write and become thought leaders, it would really be helpful. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, well, great, write the book then. And I said, no, when I said we, I meant you. You should write the book, and I should get the benefits. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, you're a smart guy, figure it out. Isn't that wonderful? I thought that was a great leadership lesson. Challenge your people. And so I did. I for about a year, I wrote down different ideas and so on. And he called me back and he said, I've hired a guy named Adrian Gostick, who's my co-author. And he said, Adrian's a writer. You've got the ideas. He's the writer. Write the book. Okay. So we wrote a book called Managing with Carrots. Mm-hmm. So it was about how to reward and recognize your employees. Mm-hmm. And we adopted the metaphor, more carrots, less stick. We even had a little mascot, Carrot the Carrot, that we used in our training, which was great fun. And the book did well. Mm-hmm. And so people would read the book and say, well, you love the book, of course you speak. Right. And we went, sure. And so we started to speak, and then we wrote more books, and we started to speak more. And then people said, love this speech, of course you have training. Right? And we thought, well, sure, and so we looked at best-in-class speakers, we looked at best-in-class training. And we developed our training around that. And we've had wonderful success. We have a new book, as you know, coming out next month with Simon & Schuster. Right. The Best Team Wins. It's our 11th book. Mm-hmm. We've sold 1.6 million copies of our books. Wow. They're in 30 languages, and we get to speak all over the world. And, this week was my chance to come to India, and it's been fabulous.
Right. Wow. Okay, so could you tell us a little more about your India visit? Whom are you meeting and whom are you training?
Well, I was invited by People Matters Conference. Mm-hmm. It's an HR conference, all about how you engage your employees, how to make them healthy physically and spiritually, but how you create those great cultures that attract the best talent and keep the best talent. I was brought in by Right Selection. Mm-hmm. There are representatives here in India and the Middle East, right. And wonderful organization. And this created, it's interesting. You come for the country and for the history and the experiences, mm-hmm. but you always come back from the people. Right. And the people here have made me feel so welcome. It's been fabulous.
Great. Could you tell our audience a little more about your latest book?
Oh yeah. So Adrian Gostick and I, we started in recognition, how you reward and recognize people, and our work progressed in stages. We then discovered very quickly as we started to train that if you don't get your culture right, the recognition doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. In other words, if you've got a terrible culture but people give you a certificate, right, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So we wrote a book called All In, How the Best Managers Create This Culture of Belief That Drive Big Results. Mm-hmm. Our next step was, we found that in high-performing cultures, you had people that not only did the job, they knew what they did and how to do it, but they were passionate about it. Mm-hmm. So you matched up the passion with the job. And we wrote a book called What Motivates Me? Put Your Passions to Work. Mm-hmm. Well, again, in our progression in training, is we looked at individual teams. So in any organization, you've got the culture, you've got the framework. You have teams that then have to execute on that promise, mm-hmm. whether it's innovation, customer service, whatever it might be. And that's what led us to write our new book, The Best Team Wins, mm-hmm. the New Science of High Performance. So what are the dynamics? Now, our books are always very research-based. Mm-hmm. Right? We wrote a book called The Carrot Principle, 200,000 engagement surveys. Mm-hmm. All in, 300,000 engagement surveys. Wow. In What Motivates Me, we have an online assessment 50,000 people have taken this motivators assessment. So this book is based on 850,000 engagement surveys, plus 50,000 motivational surveys. And what we found were the 5 dimensions of high performance teams. So the data, the case studies, and then the takeaways. Because I think it's always important. If I give you the data, that's interesting. If I tell you the story, that can be engaging. But how do I then do what those people did? Give me a roadmap.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's what we have.
Nice. So the implementation part.
Exactly. In fact, in every book we have, we usually put a chapter that has like 52 tips or 100 tips on how you put together, a great team. There we go.
Okay. Any advice, particularly to startups?
Yeah, I think everybody thinks they're a startup. Uber thinks they're a startup, right? And with startups, I think it's really important that you surround yourself with the right people to begin with. You have a dream, you have a passion. Make sure you surround yourself with the right people. And then I can't emphasize this enough. Be very careful with your money. Make sure that as you get funding or you've invested, that you really watch your expenses, and make sure that you're not overextended or you don't run faster than you're capable of. So often I think startups, they'll get around to funding and they immediately splurge. The image that we talked about earlier, the image of a startup is, I buy a Mercedes and I have really cool offices. No, stick to, what are you trying to do? Execute on, and be very careful with your resources. But I think the first and foremost is surround yourself with really good and smart people. My father was my first coach, and I quote him often, and he'd say, you never want to be the smartest guy in the room, and then he'd say, and don't worry, for you that's not going to be a problem.
That's really motivating.
Exactly. He had a great sense of humor.
Okay, great. Now, plenty of people, they look at inspirational figures like you and they want to become like you. I think virtually everybody in India who has a job wants to leave his job and become a trainer.
Right.
So, what would be your advice? How does one reach to the level that you reached? You have so many books, you have so much international recognition, you're traveling to so many countries and talking to the smartest people in the world, and I think it's a wonderful life.
It is a great life. It's a hard life. Travel is hard. It was a 16-hour flight from New York to get here, and that's hard. There really is, and I know this sounds trite, but it's very true. There's just no substitute for hard work. I got some great advice from 2 people that were coaching me. Said, look, get up every day and try to do at least 1 or 2 things to realize your dream. What did I do today to make my dreams come true? And I think that's a great way to start the day. The second piece of advice I got from a very dear friend of mine, he said, enjoy the journey. It was interesting because, Adrian and I worked for a large company for many, many years. So when we went off on our own, a startup, right, it was frightening.
Right.
And I was frenetic. I mean, every day I would wake up and say, well, we don't get a check every 2 weeks now. If we don't speak, if we don't write, we don't eat.
Right.
And it was very interesting to me that my good friend pulled me aside and said, you're missing the joy of the journey. So reflect. I love what you do with your books. Write it down, reflect on it, meditate on it, enjoy the journey, and I think that's key. How do you get where we are today? I love the old saying that says, it took me 20 years to become an overnight success. Adrian, my co-author, is a brilliant writer, and the reason he's a brilliant writer is he writes every day.
Right.
Blogs, articles, books, chapters. We've surrounded ourselves with brilliant editors, and we're open to their coaching and their training. Do it this way. Try this, try that. Experiment. Put yourself out there. No substitute for hard work. Absolutely none.
Right. Okay. That's great. Great. So what is your advice to one of the most powerful chief executives in the world, Mr. Donald Trump?
Yes, the Donald. I think the Trump presidency is actually an interesting case study of dysfunction. And one of the reasons is because you have, in my opinion, you have a leader that is so self-centered. It's all about him. And what you see around him on his team, and this is very much what we looked at in The Best Team Wins, a lot of people coming and going, and a lot of people not sure of what the message is. As we looked at high-performance teams, the team leader was very dependable. The messaging was very clear and simple. And I think what you see in the Trump presidency is all this messaging, and it changes. And the people that are working for him, day to day, they're just not sure what they should be doing. They have an agenda that's very quickly derailed because he's been offended, or he's taken something personally, or he just doesn't care. And I think that's really hard. And so it's not surprising to me that you see a lot of turnover in this presidency. So the advice I have for Donald Trump would be go do something else. This isn't what you should be doing. You're not good at it.
Okay. Right.
My opinion.
Okay, great. Do you have a specific message for HR heads from India?
To me, HR is a critical function. And I think the message I would give to HR people in India is believe that what you do is probably one of the most important things the organization can focus on, and that is their people. Human resources. We never studied a great culture. We never studied a great team that was high performing, that didn't have a people focus. And I think this can be sold short. I think particularly when you have a country as big as India, with as many people as India, you can get into the mindset, well, if it doesn't work out, I can always get someone else. There's always someone else that wants the job. That's not the focus is, let's hire well. Let's get really good and smart people, and let's create a culture where they want to stay, grow, and develop. And that's all in HR. I think HRs can be the best trainers and the best coaches to the corporate leaders by keeping what really matters most, taking care of your people. I want to share with you a mantra we have, and it's this, that the customer experience will never exceed the employee experience.
I see. Oh,
yeah. And so before the doors open, before the emails come in, have you created a culture and environment where people are so excited about your brand, about your products, that customers can't help but feel that excitement and be engaged. And that is a personal connection, that is people, and that is HR. Never forget how important that is.
Right. Cool. Any parting message to our audience?
I always love to wrap up and say, Adrian Gostic and I, for 20 years, we have studied what it takes to build a great culture, a great team, how to reinforce that with reward and recognition, how to express gratitude. And we've got the research, the models, we can prove it to you empirically. What I find tragic is when people take all that information and they leave it at work. Those principles are life principles. Take it home. We talk about write a little handwritten note to an employee that's done a great job. Well, when was the last time you had a handwritten note to your child? Put it in their backpack, or a love letter to your spouse or your partner. These principles. Create a great place to work. Take that great place to work home with you. Now, you're going to love this data point. Is that we found that people that are happy and engaged at work are 150%.
Oh, wow.
150% more likely to be happy in their personal lives.
Oh,
so again, back to our corporate responsibility leaders, send your people home happy.
Right.
Because when they're happy at work, they're happy at home. And as you train them on all these wonderful, things that they can do with their teams, make sure they're doing it at home as well. Because when you think about it, those are the people that really should mean the most to us. And sometimes they get the least of us, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much for speaking to me.
This has been a great, the pleasure is absolutely mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I want to thank Gautam Ganglani, Mr. Ram Ganglani, Stephen Zuzarte, and the entire team at Right Selection, which is probably the largest speakers bureau in the world, for making this interview possible. and thank you for watching.